So good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, September 28th, 2020. The time is 9:04 a.m. This is a special meeting of Airport and Airport Advisory Board update. Joining us is the Chairman of the Advisory Board, Joan Genter, and of course our Director of the Airport, Stephen Kiergaard. Attending Commissioners Duncan Brooks and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? None. Moving on. First of a few business items. Review of the September 9th, 20th Airport Advisory Board meeting. General discussion. Joan, were you going to lead us?
You can start, yep.
Okay, so Stephen gave us kind of an overview of the Airport 2021 budget. It was a discussion item, and it was great news that we're only $161,000 short from being in the black. That's much better than previous years. In regard to noise complaints, I personally have received several calls from the public, one of which was a pilot talking about noise airplane noise that they haven't heard ever before suddenly is in their area. And the pilot actually said he observed an aircraft under the 500-foot level that it should have been flying over a populated area. And so we had a discussion about that. I think the airport itself has received the noise complaints. And I think it's a matter of educating the public.
I'm sorry, Joan, can you turn your mic on?
Yeah, thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, can you bring it in? Just bring the mic in closer. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Still showing red. Should be showing green.
No.
yeah,
it's all
red is right. It's on.
Okay, and so the outcome of that is that I think the realtor community in particular should be discussing, aircraft, where the aircraft flight zones and stuff are with their clients, and I don't think that's happening. And I know I brought that up to the commission before, and 2 or 3 years back, and Stephen was did a very good presentation to the Association of Realtors about the airport and its impact on, the community, both economically and then, the downturn as far as noise complaints. So we're going to do a little bit more training, I think. I'm going to invite Stephen to go back to the Board of Realtors. I just think it's a discussion item that we have to have with our clients when they're moving into certain areas around the field.
And they have a responsibility because
Yes.
that's one of the areas that you check the boxes on. Are you in an airplane?
That's true.
Aircraft flight,
zone,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
You
it's
bet.
right on
And
our forms.
They all go unknown.
And that is exactly what happens because they don't want the liability of stating one way or the other.
That's right.
So it's just, I think, a matter of education and getting the word out. Maybe Latitudes has a higher volume than normal. Do you want to address that, Stephen?
Yeah, so this year, we've actually had our busiest flight training year we've ever actually had as an airport, but also we are just getting busier. For example, both in July and August, the 2 FBOs did over 400,000 gallons of jet fuel sold. That's some of the highest numbers we've ever had. I know I was talking with Resort yesterday or last week. They're already over 100,000 gallons sold for September. So we are just getting busier and busier. And the season's getting a little bit longer and longer. And also realistically, gas was cheap this year. And it definitely drove up our smaller traffic. And so saying it's all flight training isn't exactly accurate. We're seeing everybody use the airport more. We're at 250 based airplanes. We have multiple jets per day that are in and out. But realistically, the biggest issue we run into is typical. If you have one aircraft in a pattern, your pattern is fairly tight. But as you get 4 and 5 aircraft in that pattern, they tend to push further and further out to create spacing for themselves. And, we run into that issue where there's days this summer, I know we had 7 airplanes in the pattern. And you were just getting that further and further out, and it's creating more and more noise. And also, we have houses being built very close. We receive a lot of complaints from Hayden North, Strawberry Fields, any place around those. And the airport has a dedicated noise recording that we take recordings and we call them back. About 80% of all of our complaints has to do with that areas. So unfortunately, the big issue we ran into too is the airport has, you and the airport cities have zero control over what happens in the air. And completely with noise, that is a complete FAA thing.
Let me ask you a question.
Good point.
When you have two planes in the pattern, I presume they're maintaining a certain distance. How do planes space that, because if they have a control tower, how do they space themselves? What?
Typically, they do it through communications on the radios. So if you have somebody that's landing on that runway on final, somebody will not turn in typically onto base until such time that aircraft is touched down. I'll be honest, do we have incidences where we have two aircraft that have landed on the exact same runway? We do.
But they talk to each other in
talk
the
to
air.
each other. Yep.
Like I'm coming into the Coeur d'Alene Airport and I'll tell somebody I'm coming in and,
Yep, we have standardized approaches into the patterns, so you're supposed to enter a 45-degree on a downwind, which is you're going down the runway to land. They're supposed to enter on that angle, but if they're already in the pattern, they tend to work it out among themselves. They'll delay, they'll extend things, they won't turn final, or they'll slow down. There's a lot of options for it, but we run into the issue of is we have 5 to 7 airplanes in a pattern. It's a lot of airplane noise, and it's a continuous airplane noise going over the top.
Where do you get to a point, or where is the point where you need a tower?
250,000 operations, or realistically, if somebody dies to an accident on the field where it was creating an unsafe environment, then the FAA will start that questioning. This winter, we're actually planning on submitting an application into the tower program for the FAA, which is a control tower.
Yeah?
The issue we run into is that their response is going to be, well, build us a tower. That's $7 to $12 million to build a control tower.
Okay, so when you say 250,000, is that combined takeoffs, landings?
and where are we at now?
About 90.
90.
Oh, okay.
So as I've said before, the FAA is a blood organization. If there's an air collision on airport, there's something that occurs that creates an unsafe environment, things change. But we never want to see that on the airport. So,
Right. And justifying a year-round tower for when our,
and that's something I want to have a conversation with, is what does it take to bring in a temporary towers during May 1st to September 30th?
right?
But they typically don't do that. There's also other technologies out there, remote towers and things like that they can look at, but they're all in testing phases right now. But it's something as we progress and we get busier, and we are getting busier, we as a county is going to have to address what we can do to facilitate a safer environment. Because the FAA will always lag behind.
There's no nice big fat grants to do that, huh?
Not with towers.
They give us a fence, but they won't give us a tower?
Yep.
Is there a limit to the number of planes that can be in a pattern without a tower?
Nope. There is no limit, no limitations. We can't impose any flight restrictions. Don't get me wrong, there's a few airports in the country that do have noise rules, but they were instituted prior to the FAA taking them all, saying noise is our responsibility. So we run into that problem. And there is no limitations on people that can fly. You're responsible. The FAA's comment's going to be as long as they are following procedures, it's safe.
Can you share with a airport in the region that has a visual on their scope of Coeur d'Alene?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I know in military flights, you can see all the planes every place all the time. And I'm assuming they have a reach of their radar.
Spokane does have a radar reach over. I'm not sure what height it cuts out though,
Okay.
because it typically is on about a 2 to 3 degree slope.
Yeah.
So there is a point, I believe I'm assuming it's a couple hundred feet where they lose radar contact with the airport.
Okay. I just was wondering.
Yeah, and they tend to not track those things because there's no saving of what those items are. We can track IFR flights in and out and their destinations and things. In fact, we're working on getting a program for one to help us with some of our billing, but also we can track the number of data where aircraft are coming from and things. But it's not the FAA.
And then AWACS is right out of the question, huh? I mean, they literally, as you know, they can see hundreds of miles in every direction.
But they're at altitude, too.
Yeah, that's the thing, they're at altitude, and they have some very sophisticated equipment.
Okay. That it?
That's it for the noise. I also, speaking of that, I will share what we share, I will share with the advisory board, the guidelines that we'll kind of talk about when you're asking questions, so that you guys are all aware, if you've received noise complaints, what kind of the steps are. What some of the steps are of when we deal with noise complaints, how we deal with them, and who we tell them to contact. We'll share that with the three of you and the BOCC staff, so that they're aware.
Okay,
Well,
cool.
that would be helpful. Some talking points when we get those phone calls would be good.
Yep.
Joan, I don't know, when would we indicate, or when would a Realtor indicate that a property's in the flight path?
I think it should be done the minute they are looking at that particular property. And I have taken clients to Hayden North and some other, close developments around the airport, and I never once have heard them say anything to my clients about noise, or that there's even an airport there. They don't discuss it. And so that's why I say it's an education thing. We need to get the word out.
And it's not a sale killer. I mean, I have family members who choose to live. I mean, they can literally read the numbers on the planes from their
Some people are
backyard.
aviation buffs.
Absolutely.
They love it.
Yeah.
So, I think it stems down to that whole liability thing, as far as an individual realtor is concerned, not wanting to, check that box and be wrong about it.
Unknown is not a guarantee of,
That's true.
avoiding liability, because
Right.
you should have known, that's,
I personally feel that there should be in our, both in our listing packets and in our buyer packets, probably at the commission level, a form that realtors, have to fill out and present to their clients.
it's like saying, I didn't know there was lead paint.
Exactly.
In the
We do it for
house.
lead-based paint, for radon and everything else. Why not that?
point.
I can tell you that all of City of Hayden, part of Rathdrum, and part of Coeur d'Alene all fall within the airport influence areas. So,
Oh, good.
and also Dalton Gardens and anything going that way too. So pretty much anybody within a 2-mile radius of the airport falls within that.
And we probably have some realtors out there that are fairly new to the business and maybe new to the area that probably don't even know where the airport is.
I suspect you're right.
Airport?
Anyway, okay. Does that take care of item 1?
There are some other items on item 1.
Yeah,
For
go ahead.
example, the runway 2024 hold area, we discussed this previously. We asked the advisory board to do an action item on what their recommendation to move forward was as part of the design process for the decoupling process. They did recommend that we go with option A, which is the larger hold area. We also did speak with the Forest Service. They were actually in favor of option A because it allowed them to operate larger aircraft out of it, where if they have an aircraft going in, they can hold there and not interfere with traffic. So that's what is going to be moved forward, is the hold area, the larger hold area. The next was just a discussion about the Aerospace education program, and as most of you know, this is ending in a year. And it was whether or not we should basically form a committee to determine what options are moving forward, if there can be saved, anything like that. Tim Combrick sits on the board of advisors. I don't remember the exact name of it.
It's the NIC advisory.
NIC Advisory Board. His comment is there has been a lot of people who have looked at this. There's not much really we can do as an advisory board to make any changes with it. It is a great loss to the area that we're going to lose this, but their big issue always had been is they didn't have power plant. So you'd always have people that would come in and do a year and then have to transfer elsewhere. Don't get me wrong, there's been people that have gotten positions, Tamarack, different areas, but
You said they didn't have a
power plant. So there's two parts
Explain
of.
what that means.
Like engines?
Yep,
Yeah.
their big thing is there's airframe and power plant. That's what AMP stands for.
Okay.
They didn't have a power plant package, which means that they couldn't work on engines, they couldn't do most of the interior electrical stuff. It was only an airframe, so they could work on the airframe of an airplane, that was all.
How difficult is it to go the next step?
About $2.5 million is what they were estimating. And their big issue to run into as well is they don't really have space in their leased facility to accommodate both parts.
And I remember CDA Jet Center talking about at one point making space for them for a power plant.
Yep.
So,
It was part of the original grant process for, what Wally was working on, was to basically have them purchase about $2 million, if I recall correctly, of the materials that you need in order to do it. And it's also, you then have to get registered with the FAA as that part of that process. So it wouldn't have happened overnight.
but it's
Two, I
not,
think the bigger issue with that is the lease was expiring.
Yes.
For the site, and when NIC was reevaluating their entire programs, monies for programs that they were offering, that became way down on the bottom of the list because it was not self-sufficient, so to speak. And they didn't have any more grant money coming in, as I understand it. Is that correct, Stephen?
That's what my understanding is too.
That almost sounds like potentially not enough demand for that type of training.
There is demand, but they want both
The
parts.
chicken and the egg thing, without the,
right, if we offered power plant, there'd be more demand.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
So it doesn't seem like it's a done deal to me as far as, okay, it's gonna go away maybe for a couple of years, but depending on what happens in the area, it could come back.
Yeah, they're saying they're gonna be done as of this education year. So they'll be closing the doors. Do I think they could easily bring it back? Yes, they've got all the materials set up. What they do with the materials from the lab is the question, because if you don't keep them, you now have to purchase all new again.
Right.
Because I know they have a helicopter they got from surplus. They've got about 2 or 3 aircraft that I think one we gave them. So there's materials of what they do with. Our next one is just airport access. We keep talking about this at every meeting. That way everybody can't be surprised. That goes into effect October 1st. Our system is up and running and a lot of gates are being used right now. We've issued about 200 odd cards and we're still short a couple hundred though. So the first will be interesting. Also,
Can I ask a question? Does the advisory board members need access?
No.
Cards? I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure.
nope. We also kind of talked briefly about organizational chart that we've talked about as a commission for reorganizing the airport staff. It was just an update to the advisory board. And the last one is FAA grants. We're halfway through the construction project on the north side. We'll start work on the fence project as of the 12th is the planned start date. So they do hope to be done by the end of this year for fencing around on the north and west side. So, and that was it for number 1.
All right. Item number 2, CARES, thank you, Act Fund Management, potential action item.
So what this is it's, what the auditor staff did was, how we got the money was by a reimbursement of our staffing costs. But what we have to do, and I'm not saying this needs to be an action item, it can be ignored, but is we are going to receive the grants next year just because of the timeline of getting the information we needed. So we're going to get this, and it's going to be applied to our A budget. And if we want to purchase the toolcat, which is why I have the list of next question for you, is that money then needs to be transferred from the A budget to the C budget in order to allow us to do capital purchases.
Okay.
And that was how the auditor did it. We had no comments with it, so. Because the way they've applied it is they're making a hole in the they're taking those funds and saying, well, since we're being reimbursed for that money, we already have the money anyways, if we have to then transfer it. I don't know why exactly, it was just what was told to me.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got, I'm looking at.
So, and then the next
Go ahead.
question is these are items of what the cost of everything would be. To purchase everything that the airport could use is gonna be about 80,000, which means we'd have to pull about 11,000 from the airport's fund. In my opinion, the min to meet airport and buildings and grounds requirements, that's kind of where at least we should be. It's about $3,000 that would have to come out of the airport's fund. Because we run into the problem of is, the airport owns a snow pusher for it, but if we don't buy another one, buildings and grounds has to buy one. If we don't buy a bucket, buildings and grounds would have to buy a bucket. Whereas if you don't do those things, if we can't,
How much is your grant? Was it 50?
69,000.
Oh, it is 69, okay.
So it's, the grant amount's
That's right, it's in the-
69,000, and then
okay,
if we want to stay below the 69,000, that is an option. We run into the same problem though. Somebody has to buy a snow pusher and somebody has to buy a bucket. And I'm guessing Buildings and Ground doesn't have any money left over. So it's kind of an idea, and this one I'm not asking for a direction, a response on, it's just what is the board's, because this was what we talked about spending the money on. Does that work, spending more money than the grant to make it simpler for everybody? And to what level? So,
It sounds like a real small, 11,000 doesn't seem very much, and you have it in your savings, right?
we have almost 500,000,
Okay.
so.
But a lot of that's grant match, right?
A lot of it will go to grant match, but I think this year we will actually make significantly more, because the airport use fee, we're splitting it between operations and capital.
Right.
In my opinion, we could take it from that capital count and make it whole that way. But we should be we're planning to start out collecting those fees as of October 1st, so.
So 69,000 is what the CARES Act
Right.
said to you, but auditor won't transfer to capital items, she'll only transfer to,
No, you as a board can make a motion to transfer the money we get from
A to C?
To C.
right, but I don't understand why the CARES Act is going to the A budget instead of the C budget.
Their opinion is how we are getting it is from reimbursement costs of the staff, it needs to go to A. And so it would just takes a motion from the board to say we want to move it from the A budget, the CARES Act money from the A budget to the C budget.
Okay, did you know that it was staff reimbursement in the beginning? Because I've only heard capital items.
We could use it to reimburse anything. So it could have been, we chose that because it was the simplest and easiest number to get, we thought. We could have used it to say we want to reimburse our utilities, we could have done projects with it, but then you have to follow FAA grant procedures with it.
Right.
This was a way to get it in, the initial goal was to just submit the data of the hours and then get reimbursed for it and bring it into our budget. The auditor staff, it appears, went above and beyond and actually put it in as a true line item.
So we're not in violation?
Nope.
By making the move?
Nope. I know there's airports out there that are using it to cover their operations costs, but they really aren't. That's what they're submitting them for. Because when you're talking $18-19 million to some of these airports, they can do 4 years of their estimated operations costs, but once it's in their budget, they're allowed to do whatever they want.
Okay. Thoughts? I'm fine with it. I mean, if you don't do what you're going to do, as you point out, if the other groups are going to have to spend the money, someone's going to spend the money, so at least you're spending, a good part of it is the CARES money.
I will say the other option is you do nothing and it just goes into our budget, but that doesn't.
How much use does the toolcat get?
When we actually have one that kind of meets everything we do, it'll probably be 2,000 to 3,000 hours a year, which, for example, our large loader that's 10 years old has 3,000 hours on it. In Williston, it was our most used piece of equipment. We mow everything with it. We do spraying with it. The spreader on the back is actually going to replace one of our other vehicles that we have because it's a 1970s pickup. It's not in great shape. So there's reasons why we're getting some of these items that we are.
So at 2,000 hours a year, that's use of about almost 40 hours a week.
It will be more used than a lot of our pickups, actually.
Who takes care of the Armory property right now as far as lawn mowing and all that?
We do.
Okay, are you willing to continue that for a year until we can figure out how
We can
that
probably,
we sus-
we can probably do that.
Okay. Any other questions? Care to make a motion?
I don't think we need to do this right
We
yet.
can do it at a BOCC meeting. It was
Yeah,
just
we'll
a-
need to do it
we
like a
just list-
business meeting.
Yeah,
Just want to do it at a business meeting?
we can
Okay,
do it at a
all right.
business meeting. It was just
It's
a,
financial, okay.
Yeah.
what did you want to do?
That's fine. Did you want to move on to item 3?
Yep, I think that's where we're at.
Hangar Development, go right ahead.
So this is a good and bad thing. We are running into an issue in the near future. We're actually going to run out of hangar space development lots. Right now, we're at 10 lots left, which is what, if you look at this paper, it shows kind of the areas. And once we start actually counting those items up, we're at 10 hangars left, lots left that are not either we're working on a lease process for opening or basically going through our airport lease process. The other issue we run into is we average about 10 hangar developments per year. So that means we have a year left roughly of development. We do have plans in order to make new ones, but there may be a delay between when that can happen and when it doesn't. And this is kind of just a discussion item with you as the board to say, we have easily developed area of what's the extension of citation is what we call it. Is grant eligible, but it may be 2 to 5 years out. So it comes down to the question of is eventually does this board want to say we're full or start going down a process of actually developing asphalt that we may or may not get reimbursed for depending on what time frame it is. We do think, I've been talking with TO about this for probably about 2 months because we're trying to strategize how to ensure the FAA funds things. And we can get prepared for it and do things, but even that, you're talking about an additional about 12 to 20 hangars, and that's it. So we're talking 3 years if we develop everything out of what it's gonna be for space-wise. So it goes back to what does this board wanna do? Do we wanna start pushing more development? Because we just run out of space faster than we ever thought we'd have.
What's your waiting list now? How big?
So we don't have any waiting list. We have a lot of people that want to get into T hangars, which is, we do have 2 lots that can be developed if the county chose to, which would be 18, there's 36 hangar location spots. So it could be developed as a T hangar. The issue you run into is only counties and government entities typically can make a T hangar cash flow because we don't want to get paid back within 8 to 10 years. Whereas a T hangar development takes about 20 years to pay itself off. It's just what the situation ends up being.
For the benefit of the folks listening in, what is a T hangar?
A T hangar is a unit of T hangars, or hangars that they look like Ts.
They look like Ts?
They have, the airplane just gets pushed in, it only fits one airplane, that's all it does. If I thought that somebody would build T hangars, I know they'd be full within about 3 months.
That accommodates high wing and low wing?
High wing and low wing single engine aircraft. So it's, we are running very quickly out of space. And that's kind of what does this board not asking for a question, what does this board want to do of start looking to expanding on our own with the possibility it could be funded by the FAA? Or do we just say we're full?
How soon do you think we'll be turning people away?
I guess it's about a year.
About a year. Okay, so we've got some time.
We got some time, and David's group, David Callahan, is going to be producing a white paper on the issue of growth, what approaches can be taken to deal with it one way or another, and maybe we need to fold this right in.
Yep. I can
And
tell
I'll
you,
have him contact you.
Yep.
Yeah.
and I can tell you, the state just finished their transportation study. In 10 years, a little over 10 years, we added over 100 airplanes to the field.
Our airport.
Our airport, yeah.
Okay.
So if we continue on that growth trajectory, we'll have 350 by 2030. So how do we accommodate that growth is a great question that we've planned for spaces to be developed, but those are long-term plans, not a couple years down the road. So It's something, what do we try to do is what's gonna be a great question.
Well, and the other thing too is you have the number of people desiring to get pilot's licenses dropping off. So there's that too. So, there might be a natural slowdown.
And I agree, and I've made the comment to our hangar owners is who in 10 to 15 years is gonna want to buy your hangar as the population ages out. So it may reverse itself and go down, and that's one of the things that I'm concerned about as an airport director. But we also continuously have an influx of new people. Do our percentage of pilots probably drop throughout that, but what does our continuation of population look like too?
Sure.
So. It's just something I wanted this board to be aware of. If you
Yeah.
get complaints about not having space, we're trying to address it, but it's gonna be interesting the next couple of years.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions for Joan or Stephen? Public comment? Oh, yeah.
One thing, because we didn't
Sure.
receive it until after the deadline for getting items in, and I will share this with you later, is we did receive the Idaho State System Plan update, which basically talks about economic impact of what the airport does for the region. We are at about a little over $208 million a year of economic impact for the airport. We went up from 130 million roughly to 208 in a 10-year period. So it's a significant increase. We had a minor decrease in total jobs, but the total payroll went from about 40 million to almost 60 million, or 55 million of actual payroll. So that's that was basically the direct people on airport that have anything to do with the airport went up significantly.
What was that figure again? On the wages?
It went from about 40.7 million to 54.8 million.
In 10 years.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So no public comment? Time is 9:37, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.